81. Southeasterly winds 5 to 10 miles per hour. Chance for scattered storms again tonight, 67. Partly
sounds great.
A blend of clouds and sun tomorrow. Chance for isolated thunderstorms, 90. Upper 80s Friday with a chance for scattered storms. Turning cooler Saturday with highs in the low 80s. Chance for storms continues. That's your latest Chicago weather update. Right now, 59.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang.
Do you see me
They
yet?
said, I regret to inform you that was wounded in action. Victor
Hi,
sustained
April.
moderate
I only have a
to
couple minutes
injury
before I go on the air. Do you want to bring anyone else on? We
That
have
was also
attorney
very
C.K.
scary for
Hoffler.
Victor. One of the most important elements of forgiving is taking care of
Perfect. I'm
yourself.
sorry, honey. I'm running.
I
I'll be up in like
just
3
didn't wanna
minutes.
Forget that I also
Okay,
had
no
goals
worries.
and that
Bye-bye.
I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself.
Hi, Pastor Johnson. Can I get a word from you?
Council.
Don't you wish your life came with a warning app?
Vicky?
Stop that dog.
Yes. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yes,
he needs to hear
Heads
you.
up before something bad happens.
Oh, okay, good. Good morning. I'm so glad to be here with you this week.
So you
Sorry I wasn't able to be with you the past 2 weeks. Yes,
Perfect. All right. Sounds great to me.
was so poor on the
Let me run to the other room real quick to get an exact time on when the show starts, but it should be the next few minutes.
call.
We did miss
stopping
you.
smoking and eating healthier, you can stop pre-diabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Warning, the cap is loose on that ketchup.
Don't wait. You have the power to change the outcome. Visit doihaveprediabetes.org today. That's doihaveprediabetes. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its pre-diabetes awareness partners.
If you're hiring, it can feel like you're trying to find a needle in a haystack. You can hope the right person comes along, or you can just use ZipRecruiter. And now you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/free. In fact, ZipRecruiter has
All right. We are live in 2 minutes.
Okay,
their needle in a
perfect.
haystack.
Thank you.
Like Marco, president of operations at Telly.
Yeah, let's have a great show.
Absolutely.
Because Telly Tires has grown a lot in the last few years, Marco needed to hire everyone from a receptionist to a store manager to a head mechanic.
ZipRecruiter helps me find all the right people, even the most difficult jobs to fill. ZipRecruiter helps me keep my business running.
Take it from Marco and millions of other businesses who've used ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter can help you find the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. At ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/FREE. ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
This is a
1 minute.
WT820 Heartland Signal News Minute.
After over a decade of
Okay.
anticipation,
All right,
today,
everybody, let's have a great
the
show.
first high-speed trains from Chicago to St. Louis took off for their 110-mile-per-hour journey.
That's Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker speaking at Chicago Union Station on June 26th, the day that Amtrak schedules changed to reflect the faster speed and decreased travel time between Chicago and St. Louis. The upgrade is the result of a nearly $2 billion investment that was primarily funded by the stimulus package signed into law by President Barack Obama in 2009.
Investments like these not only connect our cities, they allow our residents to access new jobs and to start new businesses. And they bring neighborhoods and cities closer together to collaborate for the betterment of our entire region.
For WCPT 820 and Heartland Signal, I'm Andy Mott.
All right. Stand by.
Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Dance Factory Radio music.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Getting a little feedback. We'll work on that. It's a joy to be with you today on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Please meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, and on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Everybody, I know so many people have been requesting, and I'm so honored that you would request the Hand of Friendship on Facebook, but Santita Jackson, that page, I can't accept any more friends. In fact, they are moving you off. When you reach a certain number, they start purging people. And that's what they've done. I don't want that to happen to you. That's why I had to open up another page, a fan page that they call, so you can accept as many people as will come in. So please, as you come, you are welcome. The Santita Jackson and Friends page. Spread the word, everybody. Spread the word. Today, we're going to be talking about Black women and relaxers. I know we talked about it back in January and in March with Attorney April Prayer, but it's a subject that is coming up again. So I want to know, what about this 25-year-long study that showed the link between Black women and Hispanic women, women who have African blood? What is it that is driving sterility? Infertility, cancers, various cancers. Got to talk about that with Attorney April Prayer in the Legal Q&A with CK segment. And then let's talk about these cases that are looming before the Supreme Court: LGBTQ, affirmative action, workers' rights, particularly as it relates to the Postal Service, and so many issues that can alter how we live. We'll be talking with Attorney Darrell Jones and Reverend Todd Urey, Esquire, about that at the bottom of the hour. And then the worst air quality in the world, Chicago. The wildfires from Canada, well, they have not abated, and we are dealing with it right now. Remember, I told you last week when they said, well, they never mentioned Chicago. I said, but I'm sitting up here on the lake watching the haze every single day. I can't even see downtown. I can't even see the next neighborhood over, because of the smoke. That's what they're calling the haze. It's smoke. And so now it's the worst air quality in the world, the third largest city in the United States. And that should be more of a conversation. So I want to know what we are to do on this great NASCAR weekend, on the 4th of July weekend, when you've got some of the worst, the worst air quality in the world is here right now. And so let's talk about that. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. I was speaking to someone the other day, and I said, look, she loves to bike on the lake, and I get it. I said, I don't know. Last week, Pastor Vicki Johnson, I said, I see nothing but haze. And they said that the impact of these Canadian wildfires had reached Detroit, which is Chicago. They're just on the other side of Lake Michigan, everybody. I said, I don't know. I don't care what they're saying in corporate media. I said, I wouldn't advise you to get out here and ride your bike 5, 6, 7, 10 miles a day. You have a bike inside your home? Yeah. You know, I said, you have a bike inside? She said, yeah. I said, okay, why don't you do that? Because the haze that I see, at some point you have to be practical. You don't have to wait on people to tell you, there's a fire here. You see it. So let's make some sense, everybody. But I'm going to ask Dr. Knighton about now wearing masks outside, which is normally discouraged. But with all of this smoke and this poor air quality, what do you do? And do you have a picnic this weekend? What do we do? Okay, everybody, so let's get right to it. We got a lot to talk about today. And tell me about these relaxers. Almost every person with curly hair, curly, kinky hair, has a relaxer story. And I want to hear yours. I'll give you mine. I had a disaster when I was 9, 10, Pastor Johnson, because, that was back in the day when everybody was trying to get an afro. And my afro didn't look the way the Johnson Products afro looked. And I was very despondent about it. And I did what my mother told me not to do. I teased it every day so I can have the big bush. Well, that will come up at 7 o'clock, everybody. I want to hear what your stories are and why many Black and brown women and women with curly hair, Jewish women, will not quit. Mediterranean women cannot quit the relaxers. The straighter your hair is, that's the more professional it's supposed to be. which is a Western standard that is crazy, absolutely crazy. And when you go out of the country, when you go to Africa, when you go to these, to the global South, you see people wearing styles that are indigenous to their hair type. And hey, I'm wearing my hair straightened right now. Right now, I might change my mind next week. I mean, I've had every hairstyle known to humankind, black womankind, and I'm with it all. But don't do anything that's unhealthy. So we got to talk about that today, everybody. So let's get to these headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Wagner chief Prigozhin has arrived in Belarus. The country's president announced days after the mercenaries' military insurrection posed an unprecedented challenge to Russian leadership. The president of Belarus said he stopped Russian leader Vladimir Putin from destroying the Wagner Group and its chief after the armed revolt over the weekend. President Lukashenko said, I suggested Putin not to hurry. Let's talk with Prigozhin, with his commanders. We'll see how this story develops. A brutal heat wave is spreading across the South, leaving millions of Americans sweltering under triple-digit temperatures and extreme humidity. Forecasters are warning that such heat waves are becoming more common because of the climate chaos. Overnight temperatures, meanwhile, are not cooling down enough. I mean, you have some places throughout the South that are well north of 100 degrees with heat indexes that are going north of 120 degrees. Please go to a library. For those of you who are not in Chicago or Minnesota audience, I have people from all over the world and people from the South who are listening. Go to a library. Go to a fire department. Go to a police department. Go to a public space where they have air. You deserve to be cool. And do not accept no for an answer. Go inside, get cool, and make sure you're drinking lots and lots of water. Federal investigators interviewed Rudy Giuliani as part of the special counsel's investigation into efforts to overturn the 2020 election results, according to multiple sources, as they reported to CNN. The meeting between Giuliani, his attorney, Robert Costello, and investigators took place in recent weeks. Former NFL quarterback Ryan Mallett died yesterday in an apparent drowning off of a Florida beach, according to authorities, adding to the grim toll along the Gulf Coast in recent weeks, everybody. People who identify as transgender have significantly higher rates of suicide and suicide attempts compared with the rest of the population, according to a Denmark study. The study of more than 6.6 million people found that those who identified as trans had 7.7 times the rate of suicide attempts and 3.5 times the rate of suicide deaths than the broader Danish population. And those are some of the headlines, everybody. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 75 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 83 degrees, scattered thunderstorms today. In Major League Baseball, the Twins will be facing off against the Brewers. The Phillies 5, the Cubs 1, the Angels 4, the White Sox 2. NASCAR this weekend, Sunday, July 2nd. We all cannot wait, July 2nd, 2023. And in the WNBA, the Sparks will be playing the Sky tonight. Get those tickets, the few that are left, everybody. And the Lynx were triumphant over the Storm yesterday, 104-93. Minnesota will be playing today in professional soccer. The Chicago Fire had the day off. Pastor Vicki Johnson, how you doing? It's a joy to be with you. You know we need some good news today. And we've missed you. Oh, where's Pastor Johnson? Is she there? Ooh.
Yes, I'm here. I am here. I missed being here, but I'm so glad to be back today.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we need some good news today. You know, just need it. What's on your mind?
Please. Good morning, Santita, and good morning to all of your morning stars and friends. There is good news. The Queen of Soul, Miss Aretha Franklin, released her 7th hit composed by her and her then husband, Ted Wright. The hit was entitled Think. It was later repopularized by the Blues Brothers film. Miss Franklin, the R&B prophet, admonished us in the first line of her song with these words, "You better think." She was very frank. She said, "You better think." Why was thinking so important? Thinking is important because thoughts should precede your words and actions. There is power in your spoken word. If you practice thinking before you speak, you might choose to rethink some things before you say them and figure a better way to say what needs to be said. I believe I just said something there. What are you saying to others? What are you saying to yourself? Your words have the power to lift up or to put down. They can be a source of encouragement or entanglement. Your words can get you into trouble, as seen on our political scene today, or your words can get you out of trouble. Think about what you are thinking about. In Philippians, the 4th chapter and the 8th verse, it says, "Finally, beloved, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things." You better think before you speak, and then think again. You'll be glad you did. If you will do this, then I hope that you will. Then to me, that's good news.
Amen to that. And you know what? Project into the future. Project into the future. Oh my goodness. Think about it, everybody. And when you think, and you know what, Pastor, get on the other side of what you say to somebody or think about somebody. How would you like it if what you said was coming back at you? Just, when people say, "Oh, I'm just being honest," no, you're just being mean. And you're just being mean. I know, but people don't know. Yeah. No, you're being mean. You're being mean. And stop it. Sending you so much love, and you have a blessed 4th of July. I might be reaching back out to you for Friday because I want to talk about what 4th of July really, really means in 2023. And I want to hear it from a lot of different perspectives. And given the fact that you grew up in the civil rights movement, I think you have a perspective to offer. And so I'm going to reach it back out to you. So get ready to wake on up on Friday morning when you're already up.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
My love to you, Pastor Vicki Johnson. How can we worship with you on Sunday?
Sunday, you can worship with me at Lebanon Lutheran Church, 13100 South Manistee at 9 o'clock a.m. or at St. Thomas Lutheran Church on 80th and Jeffrey Boulevard at 11:30 a.m. And both services can be viewed Facebook Live.
Amen. Pastor Vicki Johnson, everybody. That's right. Be with her on Sunday for those hours of power. Everybody, have you noticed that, Pastor Johnson, I've got Dr. Shanina Knighton here. I just want to know, when I heard about the wildfires last week, they said, it's in the Northeast, and you saw these horrifying pictures of New York. I take that kind of personally because I've lived there for off and on since college, and more on than off. And now but they were not talking about Chicago. They said, well, it's reached Detroit. I said, it's in Chicago too. I'm watching the haze. You can't just tell me this haze is not. I mean, Detroit's on the other side of the lake. Come on, y'all. It's air. It's traveling. Well, Pastor Johnson and Dr. Knighton, I got this text from a friend of mine from CBS News in Chicago. Smoke pouring down from the Canadian wildfires from the CBS News report has created air quality so bad that Chicago was deemed the worst air quality, had the worst air quality on Earth on Tuesday. The worst air quality. And I didn't hear a whole lot of discussion about that. But shortly before noon, the poor air quality in Chicago was raised to very unhealthy. And as of 9 p.m. on Tuesday, Chicago retained the distinction of having the world's worst air quality. And I just want to know what that means, because you have been telling us, okay, there's a proper way to wear masks. And when you're outside, you need to breathe in the air. And now it's the 4th of July weekend. We've got NASCAR, a lot going on, and people want to be outside. We've been locked away for months. What do you do? Poor air quality. What does that mean? I mean, how does that impact you if you have asthma or other respiratory issues? Is it something you should be concerned about, Dr. Knighton?
Good morning, Santita, and it is. But I think one of the biggest things to know is that this is something that's happening more often than not when it comes to air quality. So meaning, for example, you are right. With going into 4th of July weekend, one of the things that are always concerning is going to be the fireworks, which are a big concern. You also, too, on top of that, because of the heat, because we haven't had, like, let's say, a lot of rain, you have the inability. So even though the air is moving, it's not actually moving as fast as it should be. The sun, I always told you that everything is moving all the time, but it may not necessarily be moving at a speed to be able to be moving pollutants out. So you have the fact that things are burning. Let's say, when we're talking about, whether that's wildfires, whether we're talking about, things just being harmful to the environment, that air, so like that smoke in that air is actually being carried over. And when you say, well, what is smoke? Smoke is made up of whatever it is that was burning or what was on fire. And so you're now carrying that through the air. And so instead of you being able to have, like, let's say, that fresh air exchange, which, tends to happen between, I know we talk about, like, let's say how precipitation happens in the cycle of air and water, but if the air is being impacted and it's not having enough time to be able to cycle out to be able to get fresh air, then yes, that would impact the air quality. And I've talked all the time about the ways in which our body handles things. And so you're either going to ingest it, inhale it, absorb it, and if you are inhaling, the air, which is thick, which is, of not good quality because it does contain contaminants, these are things that end up causing issues for people with allergies, people with asthma. We talk about health conditions that may be associated with someone having lung conditions or just not doing well. Like, it ends up leading to poor health conditions, which why, yes, it is absolutely disturbing that this happening in Chicago. But unfortunately, Santita, where you have places, such as East Palestine and Ohio, where you got railroads that are coming through all the time, where you have areas, that face gentrification, or they put a major highway, like, right there in the middle. We don't think about those emissions gases that are impacting those poor households over time because you have, like, those gases, that are being given off from the vehicles. So unfortunately, wow, this is very disturbing. You are right. I've been saying this for so many times that when we are dealing with the higher temperatures, we're dealing with slow wind speed, we're dealing with, the sunshine and the manner for which it's been, you're having this inability for things to be able to move. And the sun is a great thing. We love the sun. I mean, think about how much we can dry up in the sun or we can sweat in the sun. Well, what's happening is anything that would necessarily be in the air that would cause the air to move, it's not moving as fast because you also have that element as well.
So what do we do? Do we wear masks now outside? Should we really try to be indoors? Some people want to exercise. I told a friend of mine who wanted to bike along the lake. It's a beautiful, beautiful ride. And this was last week. I said, I see nothing but haze. You still have these wildfires. I think it's here. They said it's in Detroit. I'm just trying to be practical here, Dr. Knighton. And I told her, I said, look, do not come here. I said, do you have a bike in your home or in your building? Okay, be inside. I wouldn't come out doing that. I mean, was that sound advice? I was just trying to be practical. Because, I mean, I can't see the next neighborhood over. And that was last week.
That's the thing. So it is concerning. I know that people have to be out in it, and you are right. It is disturbing that somebody wouldn't be able to see the next neighborhood over.
Yeah.
But the problem is which again is not necessarily something that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the case like right now, but you don't know the pollutants that the masks are necessarily filtering out. It's almost like fighting something that's blind and you can't see it. So if I don't know what I'm fighting, then how can I guarantee that a mask is getting ready to protect me from that? Especially when we're talking about the element of air. We're also still talking about the fact that, yes, while it could help with, let's say, maybe potential protection of the mouth and the nose, you're still dealing with, like, your eyes, which is exposed. Your ears, you still got other canals, which are open, can be exposed. And we already know, like, people might have, like, let's say irritation. They might have congestion. Like, there's so many things associated with being in an environment that does have poor air quality.
I got 15 seconds.
And, we face this already when it comes to buildings. And so, yes, while we are talking about the air very well at some point may clear out and may get better. But this conversation should make a larger conversation to those that are in buildings, to help understand if they are dealing with sick building syndrome, which are like the symptoms of a cold or illness associated with being in that poor air quality.
Hard break. We're going to continue this conversation on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody, please be careful. In Chicago and wherever you see haze and the heat indices, which are so high, please be careful, everybody. You can have a good time, but you got to be safe. Let's talk about the Supreme Court. We're talking to Dr. Shanina Knight over the break on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Back in a moment. Hey, but please continue, Dr. Knighton. Because I'm sorry, I was sending you texts and whatnot late, and I try to be sensitive to the fact that you are a married woman with children. It's just that as I saw this, I do. Once my girlfriends get married, they're like, you don't call me anymore. I said, I'm not that girlfriend who is up in your mug. you got another set of priorities.
And see, but I'm going to tell you, and you talked to Robert that day and you heard what he said. He said, you know what? He said, my wife got so much love to give. He said, how could I not share it with the world?
He is a special man. But you know what? It takes a big man to be married to a real big woman. And I love him and I love you both. And I support you because I see you as young people really working to create a wonderful family, to be stable for your whole family, and to be an example for the community. And that is what we need. That is what we need. And I thank you for that. I think, I have to tell you, we had a tabloid year, where my father had a child outside of my parents' marriage. And I was standing on the street. I don't know if you're still there, Pastor Johnson. But I was standing on the street in New York, and I was waiting to get into a friend's restaurant on 116th Street. Fabulous restaurant. Mamie Ruth's, I think it is. And Carl Redding is the chef. Fabulous food. And and these people were riding and they did a U-turn because 116th is one of the main thoroughfares in Harlem. And they were running across the street. So I stepped away from the door because I thought they were trying to get in because it was later on a Sunday and I know they were trying to get on the list before they closed the list. No, they were running from me. They were like, you're a Jackson, aren't you? I said, yes, I am. Oh, my goodness, we love you, Santita, right? Yes. Thank you for staying with your father. I'm like, huh? No. You could have, you could have gone to the press and you could have. I said, I can't tell you anything other than he's been a great father.
Hi, Miss Jackson.
Yes.
Hi, we have Dr. Todd Yeary, Attorney Daryl Jones, and Chappelle Wells. We have a minute and a half.
Okay, thank you. I said, I can tell you he's been a great father. I said, I can tell you he's been a great husband. And I can tell you I'm going to stay with him no matter what. But people appreciate that because we need that. We need to see people stay together. And you have to know when you need to exit, too. I get that piece. Trust and leave. But that's one of the things that I appreciate about you and your husband. And he's such a lovely, lovely man. He really is. As is Chappelle Wells' husband. Chappelle Wells' husband needs a halo. Yeah, he does.
Don't say that, Santita. Then it's going to go to his head. You know he listens in the morning.
Girl, I know exactly he does. I know he needs a halo. Because, I mean, Daryl Jones and Reverend Dr. Urey, you are blessed that this woman is not. Your wife, she's going to read you the riot act. She's going to get in Facebook jail. She's going to do a TED talk. And she is going to shop. She's going to work, but she's going to shop. She keeps this man working all the time. Got me working day and night. Yeah. What did Michael Jackson say? She keeps me working day and night. I said, oh, I guess he's going to have to stay out 7 days this week, huh? And you're like, yes.
Back in 30.
Hey, she's standing on the step around here.
That was sad. It's so sad. I'm like, she's going to kill a brother, but that's all right. Oh, but stand by. You know what? I both want you both to listen to what we're talking about with these Supreme Court decisions. It's going to be a tremendous term that's going to reshape how we live. Stand by, everybody. Hey, Lynn, be careful.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, Wednesday, June 28, 2023. It is a joy to be with you today as we talk about the Supreme Court. And as we talk about the Supreme Court, of course, we've got Chappelle Wells, but I wanted Dr. Shanina Knighton to finish up what she was telling us about how we can protect ourselves, because as of Tuesday, Chicago had the worst air quality of any city on earth. The Canadian wildfires are still burning, and they are impacting us. I can't see the next neighborhood over, okay? And it's a real issue, and that has been the case for more than a week. And while they were saying, well, it's in Detroit, I'm like, it's in Chicago too. So just very quickly, in the final minute, and we will be revisiting this because it's so thick out there. You said you don't know. The air is full of the pollutants and whatever's been burning from Canada, and I'm assuming since air mixes and travels, it's just bringing everything with it. Dr. Knighton.
Yes, and so that's exactly it, Santita. Like, one of the biggest challenges that we have is people want to know what should they do. And so the best solution is that if you are experiencing bad air quality outside, the goal should really be to try to stay inside as much as possible. And I know that sounds tough for people. They're like, okay, well, what do you mean stay inside? But you have a better chance until that air quality does change. The other piece is you do have, like, let's say, rain, which does make a difference. I know people don't think that it does, but you need the rain to kind of like drop some of those particles down. And while it doesn't seem like it's actual particles in the air, it does make a difference in regards to them lingering. I know that we didn't get a chance today to talk about air quality inside of buildings, but I think that it's very important to think through what happens if you are in a situation where it's bad air quality. What are some signs and symptoms that you should look for when you're dealing with bad air quality? And how do you advocate for yourself or speak up for yourself when you are in those situations? Of having to deal with bad air quality inside of a building or even if inside of your home. And unfortunately, this is one of the things that rarely gets addressed. I'm sorry, Santita, that was my child.
Don't apologize for the baby.
Well.
Don't apologize for the baby.
Yes, but it actually does impact like what's going on, and it's something that's rarely considered in that regard. And so I know that we don't have a lot of time to like actually get into like we'll get into it tomorrow because I hate to say it, but the problem has lingered for days. It just hasn't garnered a lot of conversation. We're jumping to Ukraine on the news before we're talking about the third largest city in the United States having the worst air quality on earth.
And that's
and
insane.
People be hospitalized. The problem is people can be hospitalized for it, and so they're like, "Oh, well, it's just air." But it has a profound impact if you're not careful, and so that is the big thing that we should talk about in regards to those signs and symptoms. And I know we're talking about it being hot. I heard you yesterday touch a little bit when it comes to, like, let's say, heat stroke and heat exhaustion symptoms, but it's very important that when you're dealing with that, you're also dealing with poor air quality. What should you look for? Because unfortunately, it's enough to hospitalize people, especially if they have sensitive triggers such as asthma, allergies, or some sort of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or let's just say lung disease. That would make it challenging for them to deal with that air.
Well, you know, let's really jump into that tomorrow, because we have to find out, because sometimes our children are in distress, or we could be in distress and might not know it. I think we have to know how to observe other people and what to do when you're having that asthma attack, when you're having that respiratory attack and you don't have the inhaler. I mean, there's just a lot that's going on, everybody, because even to have an inhaler, it costs. You know, I mean, you know, there's just a lot going on. Dr. Shanina Knighton, everybody. Dr. Shanina Knighton. Hey, Dr. Nina, were you about to say one more quick thing?
Yes, Santita, that is something that, too, we're going to add on to that conversation. It's just when riding in a car, the negative effects of having recirculated air on in the car with strangers.
Okay. All right. Attorney Daryl Jones, who is very much into health, Reverend Dr. Uri, very much into health, and of course, Mrs. Wells, you have got all these children. It's something to think about. It's something to think about. We love you, Dr. Knighton. Hey, Dr. Nina, HEYDRNINA. That is her handle. And I'm sorry we had to prolong this discussion on that today. Mrs. Wells and Attorney Jones and Reverend Dr. Todd Uri, Esquire, because as of Tuesday, Chicago has the worst air quality of any city in the world. But in the meantime, is it too late to get any victuals from Celebrations by Us for the 4th of July weekend?
Santita, we still have like 2 slots available, so give us a call, 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We'll be on the grill this weekend. We'll be doing ribs, short ribs, as well as also jerk chicken, baked chicken, and our baked beans, spaghetti, coleslaw, potato salad, all your trimmings for your holiday meal. So don't hesitate to give us a call, 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We look forward to serving you. Thank you so much, Santita.
Oh, absolutely. I'll be calling you a little bit later so I can get my little victuals in. I can tell you, I want it all. Hair relaxes, everybody, and this 25-year-long study that between sterility or infertility and cancers and Black and Hispanic women. Got to talk about that. But the major Supreme Court decisions that we're still waiting for, as we've been hearing a lot of stories about the ethical challenges facing the court and the inhabitants of the court. We're looking at affirmative action. We're looking at workers' rights, particularly as it relates to the Postal Service, LGBTQ works. I mean, should people work on Sundays? Student loans, Voting Rights Act, all of that. Indian Child Welfare Act. I mean, wow, we just heard about that. So let's talk with you, Attorney Daryl Jones and Reverend Dr. Todd Uri. Thank you for indulging me. But you know, look, when you come in July, Attorney Jones, you might have to run in place and not outside, given our air quality issues. Oh my word, he's a marathoner, everybody. What are the big cases before the court? I just named a few that we're still waiting on decisions, Attorney Daryl Jones. But voting rights, LGBTQ, I wasn't even aware of Sunday work with relationship to Postal Service workers, for example. I mean, what are the major, how will these court decisions impact us? And what to you are like, can you rank them or just look at them? Because they all seem to be very, very important. Attorney Jones.
Yeah, good morning, Cynthia, and you're absolutely right. They're all extremely important. And the one that I think is carrying a lot of interest right now is the affirmative action case dealing with education. And that's the case where the University of North Carolina and as well as Harvard have both been sued by really students, Asian students for the most part, regarding the admissions policies and whether or not racial preferences can be used, consideration can be used with regards to the admissions practices at either a public or private university, of course, UNC being the public and Harvard being the private. That's going to be one of the most interesting pieces that are out there. And interestingly, it's probably going to be an indicator as to which justice writes that opinion, as to how that opinion is going. And what I mean by that is that, we just received the opinion on Moore versus Harper, which is the North Carolina voting rights case, which is a major victory for the voting rights community. And that opinion was authored by Chief Justice Roberts. What generally happens is that the author of the opinion is usually carrying the majority opinion, obviously, for the court. So if the author of the opinion for affirmative action is Justice Thomas, believe it or not, it's an opinion against affirmative action, striking down the racial preference, racial factors that could be used for the admissions policy. The other potential author that's out there right now for the next opinion to come out would be Justice Kavanaugh. If it were dealing with the affirmative action piece, he's more of a 65-35, 65 conservative, 35% toward the progressive side. You don't exactly know where he's going to fall. So it'll be interesting to see which justice writes the opinion for the affirmative action case. One of the other big cases that's really out there is I call it the Baker case, right, dealing with the cakes. And the question is, can a business that is, considers itself a strongly religious, strongly Christian business that is in the business of baking wedding cakes, can it be forced to bake cakes for a same-sex couple if they don't believe in same-sex marriage? And that's one of the bigger decisions that's out there for the LGBTQIA plus community, and for that consideration is can someone who doesn't want to serve a same-sex couple be forced to serve a same-sex couple based on the constitutional principles and what must be done? Those are two of the big cases that are pending there right now. The third case that actually is a huge case, particularly for Gen Zs and young millennials, deals with the student loan debt and whether or not the Biden administration has the ability to cancel the student loan debt. And that's going to be Reverend Yuri will certainly appreciate this. This is going to be an exciting case for us lawyers, because one of the first questions they're going to have is one of standing. That is, do the states, because they're all Republican states that have brought this action against the Biden administration. And the question is, do the states actually have standing to stand there and be in the position of objecting to what the students are receiving from the Biden administration? So it's going to be a really interesting set of three cases that are coming out, those three cases that are coming out. And, I would add that both the same-sex case as well as the affirmative action case in education and the student debt case could have a major impact in the 2024 election based on, how it's received across the country from students, from those that are in same-sex unions, as well as those that are fans of affirmative action in education.
So what did you say? I mean, I guess Kavanaugh, the court has surprised me, particularly Justice Gorsuch, with respect to his rulings on these cases regarding Indigenous people, because he's turned out to be quite an advocate for them. And I mean, and I'm happy about that. But he has surprised me. Do you expect any of the other justices to surprise us?
The only justices I expect any surprises from are Roberts and Kavanaugh. And, and when I say surprises, this is the reason I say that. I think that, and we've talked about this previously, that this Supreme Court is at an all-time low when it comes to the favorability rating, the trust rating that the country has in them. So they're going to be trying to take positions now to try to restore the faith and trust of the United States people in them. There's another factor that's here that I think people miss, and that is that it is the presence and the influence of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. She is one of the clearest, purest legal thinkers and analyzers that sits on that court. She influences, she and Kavanaugh, she and Roberts run in a lot of the same social circles, and you can see her influence with regards to the questioning, the analysis that Roberts and Kavanaugh now are being forced to deal with. Got to remember, when it was just Justice Thomas, he wasn't putting forth the arguments that were advocating principles of fairness and wrapping it in the Constitution and constitutional principles and history. That's what Ketanji Brown Jackson, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, brings to the bench. And you're seeing her from a minority position have an effect on majority opinions. So it's going to be interesting to see. Unfortunately, for the affirmative action decision on education, she has recused herself from that because she was on the board with Harvard. But so we won't have her influence necessarily there. But with the other remaining decisions, with the Cake case, right, the Baker case, as well as the student loan debt case, we are going to see her impact there. So it'll be interesting to see how that all shapes up. But look for Roberts and Kavanaugh to be affected by some of the analysis of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Well, let me start with you. Thank you so much, Attorney Darrell Jones. Brilliant analysis, as always. Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, one of the cases that I hadn't even thought about was the case about working on the Sabbath. What about that? What about working on the Sabbath? I mean, do we have a protection so that we can keep our jobs and work on the Sabbath? I mean, my father often talks about Sandy Koufax, the legendary pitcher, who would not pitch on Yom Kippur. And that moved my father so much as a little boy, or should I say as a I guess he was in his teen years. He said because he took his religious commitment so seriously that even, at the height of his career, in a season-changing game, he said, I can't do it. I can't do it because I have a religious prohibition. This is a sacred holiday for me. What about that?
Well, good morning, Santita and Brother Darrell. And I'm not getting into the prior discussion that you had with Mr. Pearl and Dr. Schmidt.
I know you want some food. Okay.
Well, look, you keep it. Look, Darrell Jones said something about standing. I'm trying not to act mine. So
he wants food, Darrell. Okay, so Chappelle's still listening. He'll be here in a couple of weeks, Chappelle. Just lay it out for him like you do for preachers. You need to go and get your license, Darrell, because she's gonna lay it out for him. Okay.
You don't be right beside the hand that feeds you. Yeah, that's right. That's right. We'll be together. The Golf DeJoy case, where a postal service employee was required to work on Sunday after the postal service contracted with Amazon to do deliveries on Sunday, is arguing about what is called accommodation, religious accommodation in particular. And the religious accommodation question here is whether or not the Postal Service has an obligation to grant the accommodation if it's going to adversely affect the business. There's a what is the business interest versus the individual's interest, particularly when you don't have maybe a contract that is balancing the weights of the obligation to kind of guide you. And so I think it's going to be particularly interesting to see what are the limits of the religious accommodation, and also because of the invocation of religion, who's going to opine on that as well. To Darrell's earlier point, who writes that decision, I think is going to be particularly key, but also if there is a dissenting voice, if it's not a unanimous court, that resolves the matter? Who's going to write the dissent? I think those two things are going to give us the bookends. One's going to establish the law as it will be. One's going to establish the law as it may become, depending on what future challenges might portend. I think the real question here is, what is the accommodation that was actually sought, and was it a permanent one? I cannot work on a Sunday, whatever that Sabbath is. And was that made clear at the time the employment relationship was set? And was there a commitment that said, well, you won't have to work on Sundays because we don't work on Sundays? That was kind of a standard practice. So is this a change in working conditions? Was this a matter? It's a Title VII. It's an individual complaint. But I think it's also interesting to see what effect it might have on the Postal Workers Union, how it affects collective bargaining around certain working conditions. I think there are a lot of questions that are going to come out of that decision based on what we see, but I don't think it's particularly clear, and I haven't read the briefs, to know whether or not there was an attempt to accommodate. And because the accommodation was not absolute, there was a basis for the suit. I think there's going to be some way to kind of maybe split the baby, if you will, deal with the accommodation obligation, but also make sure that businesses are not put in a compromised position when it comes to a significant part of their ability to exist and compete.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you just prompted another question to me. Controversial decision, split the baby. Well, I don't know how King Solomon would feel about that, but okay. But that happens, and it's the Supreme Court. Is there any recourse people have? Do you expect to see this decision revisited? I mean, how would that work?
Well, the Chief Justice Roberts Court has tended to be, where possible, where Roberts is not severely outnumbered, rather incremental, right? Even with his version of incrementalism in the Dobbs decision was kick it back to the states. We're not going to say that it's not in a woman's interest to have control over her reproductive health. It is that's a question for the states. It's not a question for the federal government, and therefore the decision that Roe v. Wade brought forth is wrong based on who makes the decision. We know that's kind of the convoluted way that they split the baby. In some of these issues, and this goes back to the affirmative action case, you've got interest on the public side, that's the UNC case. You also have the private side. And the question has come up whether or not there will be a carve out for the military academies who have a different interest around diversity and workforce readiness, right, in terms of the armed services. But the other question I have, and Daryl, I've been meaning to run this by you, we have a math problem. Because Justice Jackson is recused in the Harvard case, but not in the UNC case, do we potentially have conflicting decisions based on where the justices might be? On one hand, you have a private higher ed institution, the other you have a public. Does that have some weight on the decision? But also because you have Justice Jackson weighing in the deliberation and in the oral argument, could you potentially have a difference in how these are weighed? Because you may not come away with you may have 5-4 one direction, you may have 5-3 on the other. And does that then change how the two rulings kind of relate to each other? The subject matter is similar, it's not identical. And so I think there's a reason why those decisions are coming down at the very end of the term, because I think the math may be a little more complicated. In this session, it's been a little more difficult to read this court on matters of race and racial impact. These decisions, I think, are going to be telling about whether or not John Roberts still has control of his court, or whether or not there's a mutiny going on within the nine that is going to continue to play out in the days ahead.
Well, I mean, Reverend Uri, I've got about a minute left. What happens if the North Carolina case goes one way and the Harvard case goes another way? Where does affirmative action stand? Will it stand, or what? I mean, what's going to happen?
Well, that's the $64,000 question, because then it comes down to what do the rulings actually say. Whatever the new holding, the new rule of application, because they're both trying to undo the Grutter decision, but they're coming at it from possibly different angles. And I think there may be some wrestling, and I think Chief Justice Roberts is probably having to lean in on this, because I don't think he wants to upend the practice in higher education writ large, right? This is where the incrementalism comes in, what is often his approach. He tries to present himself as a moderate. If the votes push him to be a little more extreme, it could, because of when the ruling comes down, you've got admissions coming up in real time, it could potentially throw into chaos the upcoming academic year for higher education institutions, public and private, across the country. And when you have that kind of extreme impact happening on the basis of a potential decision from the high court, they tend to consider that as a factor in terms of what or how far to go in their decision, so that the adverse impact on what the existing practices have been does not lead to gridlock in terms of higher education. I think you're seeing that kind of wrestling, and I do agree with Darrell that Justice Jackson's voice is probably one that is ringing most poignantly in this whole discussion. So stay tuned. The next set of rulings comes out tomorrow.
Well, stay tuned. You know what? You're prompting another question for me tomorrow, and I want you all to come back. Should Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson have recused herself from this affirmative action question? On the Harvard side, but not on the UNC side. Two different cases can absolutely impact affirmative action. So what do you think? Let's talk about Black women in hair and Hispanic women and hair relaxers, and women from the Mediterranean, Jewish women who have curly, kinky, nappy hair who wear relaxers. There's a 25-year-long study that shows a direct link between sterility and cancer and these hair relaxers. So what do you think about that? Some people are saying, oh, that's not true. Other people are saying, oh, yes, it's quite true. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Gentlemen, I got to have you back because we need to talk about that, I think.
Tomorrow could be very interesting.
I would love to hear it, because I know some people are a little salty about it. So,
I'm absolutely looking forward to it.
Okay. Just like, wait a minute. Yes, please. Yeah.
I think the discussion about Justice Jackson's ethical dent is one that should be lifted up, and that she is a woman of conscience and capability that we have not seen in this court because of the shenanigans of Justices Thomas and Alito. And so I think there's something to be said, not just what you do, but why you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other thing I was going to say is, since you're talking about hair relaxers, I'm not touching that one. You have a wonderful discussion with that one. I'm going to be all in.
Oh, man, get out of here. You could. Well, but it's very interesting. I remember as a little girl when George Johnson, the owner and founder of Johnson Products, which gave us Afro Sheen. I remember as a little girl when he had a relaxer. Hello? You there? And I remember that. I was like, wow, that was like always very interesting to me, even as a little girl. It was very interesting. But, he was selling hair care products. So, what you going to do?
I think we all remember the days of the Jerry curl, male and female alike. When you start adding sterility to it, it's a little...
Baby, you have not lived until you were at Howard University in the 80s when I pledged, and there was a guy who made line for one of the fraternities. He might be listening to me, and I don't want him to get mad with me, but it was hilarious. They said, if he makes line, because he was a really good-looking guy, I hope they cut that Jerry curl. That's what all the girls said. And don't you know, when we all showed up on the yard, at the chapel that Sunday, because I was pledging that year, They had taken him, them brothers had taken him to literally a razor. They cut all his hair off. I said, Lord, back in the day of the Jerry curl. A curl.
And there you get all those extra bottles of Jerry juice.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember in Coming to America when the Jerry Curl family, the hair care family, when they got up off the sofa? Oh,
Look, how well do we remember that one?
oh my gosh. Everybody in the theater, y'all, for those of you who've not been to the theater with black people, black folks do call and response in church and in the theater. You got and you used to do it on the radio. You used to have to hear a song twice. Because DJs used to talk all through the song. And we will talk all through the movie. Don't touch it. No. You know what they're going to do? Oh, my gosh. Like, I wish you would shut up.
And they yell back at the screen when it happened.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but when they got up from that chair and those stains were there, I think a lot of us had flashbacks.
Oh, my gosh. That was so rich.
Santita.
Yeah, girl.
Santita.
Yeah.
Good morning. I had y'all on mute, but I have to say that I heard the Jerry curl. I know Reverend Todd here did not talk about the Jerry curl.
Yes, he did.
Did you have a Jerry curl? I bet you had a Jerry curl. Was it dripping or did you have the apple curl or did you have the Jerry curl?
No, it was Soul Glow, girl. You know it was Soul Glow. Soul Glow. Wait a minute.
All I know is I did have at least one yellow bottle with some sort of concoction in it to try to keep my hair soft and flowing.
Soft and flowing? Oh, okay. Right. This Negro had a Soul Glow up in his hair. And he took that lesson. He didn't want to go see that movie because he was taking it personally. Like, wait, what y'all talking about me? Wait a minute. And honey, that or all that heavy grease that these, I was like, what? Nobody wants to even touch your hair. This is awful. just leave it alone. Stop it. Stop.
That green ultra cheese thing in the house. So when we went
Hi, Ms. Jackson.
cornrows to
We have Attorney C.K. Hoffer and Attorney April Prayer.
it's just everybody be for liquid. So enjoy your discussion, Madam Chair. To your point, I plead the fifth. It wasn't me.
You know you had that. You had that, as we used to call it, that butter in your hair.
I think I saw you with a Jerry curl.
Girl,
I saw you with a Jerry curl. That wasn't you?
Girl, you know he had that butter up in his hair.
I mean, I'm going to follow the grease left behind by Todd on his way out and let y'all have this discussion.
Yeah, you did. You know he had that. You know he had that Soul Glow. Soul Glow. That was Todd.
Well, you know, Soul Glow means a little something different. It could also be, we like to. We didn't go out with ashy skin, so Vaseline was our friend. You'd see a shine on the face and then the glow in the hair. So there was a whole lot of reflecting of light happening.
You did Soul Glow. Soul Glow. Soul Glow. Soul.
Back in a minute.
Well, I could tell when you left ultra sheen, afro sheen.
Oh my gosh. I love all. I took the prayer and do it. Yeah. Oh, honey, having a good time. These brothers. I'm so glad that they cut that guy's hair. He was so good looking. Oh my gosh. And you were like, you could see his looks up under that curl. It was like, what? And we were all, my line sisters and I, the pyramids, we were nudging each other. We said, we told you that Omega was cut his hair. We told you. Oh, the glories of Black life. You gotta love it. But I used to go over to George Washington, your school, CK. I'm getting an echo. Because that's where I used to buy my hair care products. I
was Georgetown.
Georgetown. Well, you know what? I'm thinking of my girl, my line sister, of course, Ethel. And I used to go over to George Washington to get my hair care products. They had a big Jewish population, and they had products for curly hair. Because I couldn't have a relaxer. Oh boy, all the things we go through, just trying to make it. All right, everybody.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a peace of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. I told you need to be over here on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. We have a great time doing crosstalk, getting some feedback, everybody. I'm Santita Jackson coming to you on Wednesday, June 28, 2023. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. And I just want to know, hey, everybody, how are you doing today? It is a joy to be with you today. A joy, just an absolute joy, just to be with you. And talk about what is happening with Black women and our hair care. I want to know what your thoughts are. What about us and our hair care? What about this study? I want a certain look.